So yeah, let's go ahead and jump in. We're taking this face texture here, and we're just feeding that directly into our principled PSDF. Whereas I think what we could do is we could use the same face-like mask that we created earlier, which is this guy right here. I'll just copy-paste him. And I kind of want to view this guy. And this face material here, that's pretty good. I just don't like this stuff. Now, I could go edit the paint that we actually did here, but just an easy thing for us to do also is using like a mix color node. And if I use a mix color node in conjunction with this, as well as this main face thing, then let's see, our main face mask is white, so we're going to want that mask part to go to the B section, or actually to the A section, and the B section we're just going to make it completely black, and we'll plug this into the factor. And then of course this just gets plugged directly into our base color here instead of this going all the way around. I can just paint over top of this with a regular brush. So I'm going to do is I'm going to use a decimate functionality here and probably just make it like a 0.2 or something crazy. So let's look at our arm here. Let's see what we could do. It's either drawing it. I might want to draw sharp and then smooth the bottom section of it. We'll just draw that decently sized where I can make it feel like it's a separate element. Let's see. That's good there. I'm going to just draw decently regular sized here on the bottom. We're just going to buff up this bottom section. And then we'll smooth this out that goes all the way down to the rest of the arm. The other thing we're going to probably want to do is mask off the section that we want to keep sharp. So we can use a mask tool here. And then I'm going to use this subtraction here, and then we just get rid of the bottom of this. We have this hard line at the top. We can use our smooth feature. So we're going to create a crease on the inside of it, which is like this section here. And then we're going to use like a pinch tool for this outside piece there. So for our mask option, let's go back to mask. Yeah, there it is, clear mask. Booyah. I knew there was a button. I was like, there has to be a button for this. But now all I'm going to do is basically crease the top part of this socket and then pinch just like this section right here. That's the arm piece. So we're going to have to do the same thing to the other side on the other arm. Let's see. I'm going to smooth out just like this section here a little bit. And then on the inside here, I kind of want to do another crease. And now we're just going to kind of create that internal mechanisms that maybe this arm has. With that might come creating some knots or something like that in the arm here on the side. Just feels very smooth. So you might want to adjust that as well. So let's go into the sculpt mode here. And just using this crease function, we actually might be able to create some of these knots in the center. Let's do the kind of the ball socket on the other side of the arm, or the other arm, I should say. I'm going to want to do that here on the bottom of the wrist as well. Grab this arm now, and then let's go into sculpt mode on that. Again, we'll just swap this to solid view so that way we can kind of see what we're doing here. Just want to create kind of like this sharp outline around this, which we could do again just with like our sharp drawing tools. So I'm kind of just bunching up this around the bottom of the wrist here to kind of create the idea that this like wrist socket is kind of like shoved into the clay or the material. Might smooth this out a little bit more. I think this down here, I'm going to go into sculpt mode on it. I haven't done anything to this yet. It's literally just a cylinder, but we can certainly draw some different mechanisms that we want to have on it. I'm going to do another multi-res. Sometimes this multi-res thing is a mystery to me. But yeah, now that we have that in there, I'm just going to go to sculpt mode and then paint in some mechanisms that we would have. Do maybe a few more subdivisions. Although I'm probably going to have it go into it rather than have it sticking out. The only other thing I might do is let's take this whole thing. I'm going to set that to 5 as well so we can really see what we're doing. Yeah, I like that. Let's shade that smooth. Might take this outside edge here. Let's subdivide this one more time. And let's just sharpen this section. We could do with our pinch tool. We just want to sharpen the outside to make it feel like this is the edge of the wrist lock joint. And now all I need to do is using the inflate tool, we can inflate the inside of this and center it as well. I'm going to take our wrist joint that we did over here and just duplicate it. I don't want to redo my work. And mostly I'm just not a fan of this leg here. Just wanted to widen it a little bit. Kind of want to find like a knitted texture pattern. So if I could do cloth. First one first. With this cloth materials or the actual object selected, let's add in a new material that we'll call sheet. So let's go ahead and drag and drop them in. I guess you can only do one at a time, so let's just drag both those in individually. And with these, let's plug our roughness here directly into our roughness of our principal BSDF that we have. And already we're going to notice that we are getting a different amount of roughness on different areas. I think one of our problems is that we're solidifying this after a multi-res, which is happening with our everything else. So let's just add in everything that we want. I'm going to apply our modifiers one by one. This is just going to make it a lot easier for us. So now when we go into edit mode, we actually see our vertices. If I select everything then, and then hit, let's just use Smart UV Unwrap. Now the scaling is just incorrect, but since everything has been applied in our modifiers, we don't have to worry about any weird warping with our UV projection. Now all we need to do is taking this fabric pattern, we need to then add in our texture coordinates and mapping. And now I like to add in an additional node called value, and if I plug value into our scale option here, it replaces all three of these values with a single number that we can easily adjust. So this is our roughness. Now we can plug our roughness directly into our roughness on our principal BSDF. Our mapping that we're using here, we are also going to want this plugged into the vector of our normals, because it's going to be using the same mapping. And now if we plug in that all into our principal BSDF, our roughness is currently adding in a specific amount of roughness to our sheet, which gives it kind of like this glossy material that's happening every now and then. So let's take our normals now and plug this into our normal input. But we obviously can't just drag this over to our normals because this is not correct data. This data right here is just an image and it needs to be converted into normal space. So if I convert this using a normal map node and plug that into our color here, you'll notice that it translates it into what actual normal data is. And then we can plug this normal data into our principal BSDF and then view our principal BSDF again. And now we are actually getting normalized data. It is doing bump only for displacement, and we're going to want to do displacement and bump for everything. We're going to use this into the displacement functionality of our actual node graph, because right now we're only using normals, which is good for lighting, but it's not exactly great for the actual shading of everything and the topology of stuff. So I'm going to use our roughness material that we have here, and I'm going to plug in a color ramp so that way we can adjust the amount of displacement that we're actually going to be affecting and just kind of create crunchier values. But unfortunately, it is extremely intensive on the displacement. So let's just use a math node. We're going to multiply this. If we multiply this by like a smaller value, we can control the amount of displacement we want. But the cool thing is, you'll notice is that we're actually getting those bumps now inside of our actual topology. And now if we go view our principal BSDF, you'll notice immediately we're kind of getting that topology that's going everywhere. Lessen the amount of our normals over here. So if we do grab our pattern that we have, our like actual fabric pattern, we can plug this directly into our base color that we have on our principal BSDF. But again, we're trying to make a black and white image, so we're going to want to adjust this before this goes directly in there. Because right now it's going to make everything red. Oh, and our scaling is incorrect. So let's plug this vector as well in. So that way it scales everything appropriately to the size that we need it to be. And then now we can actually adjust our fabric pattern color here. Let's change our hue and saturation after the color here, and then change the saturation to a 0. And now we got ourselves a black and white kind of fabric that's sitting on top of everything. Let's go ahead and select our blanket that we have here. And we're going to add in a little particle system with some hair, and we'll scale everything down here. Oh, no. 1000 is probably fine. Let's go to solid view here. What we're going to want to do is we're going to scale the distance down, because we're just going to create these like tiny little like fuzzies that you get on like different types of cloth material. I'm going to edit some of our particle settings here to accomplish that. So first things first, we'll add in some interpolated hairs. I'm going to set this down to 10 because we don't want a lot of children or even hairs in general. I always like to set whatever the render amount and the display amount, I like to set those to the same number. First things first, let's make this like curly hair. Let's make this a little bit smaller now, the amplitude, and then I'm also probably going to change the frequency here as well. It's probably good. And then change the amplitude here, and then also change the scaling here. The only thing is these hairs are pretty large. I don't want them to be quite as large. For the hair shape, I'm going to change the diameter here to a 0.01 or something quite a bit smaller. Let's change the scaling here, the hair length to be a 0.1, a little bit longer. And then we're also going to add in a new material down here. Let's hit new and change this to a principled hair BSDF. And now if I go over to my hair particle settings, let's go to render and then change the sheet to our new material that we created, which we can actually name if we wanted to. And honestly, for the coloring of it, let's turn on preview real quick to see what this would look like. But we're going to want this to be pretty light. Our size of everything is too small. So our diameter root right now is 0.01. Let's change this to like a 0.05. I'm also going to adjust the shader of this. Let's change the roughness here to be... Yeah, I like that a lot better. For our segmentation, let's just make that a larger number. Maybe 20 was a bit high. But let's go ahead and select our bed material now. And I'm thinking our sheet that we have here, if we do just select our sheet, let's use that as like our starting place. I'm going to duplicate our material here and we'll call this, we'll call it mattress. And now going into edit mode, let's do Smart UV project. And now the color that we're plugging into our base color here, we're probably going to want the value here to be a little bit lighter than the rest. And I'm actually going to just use an overall color ramp. We're going to want our darker values to be a little bit lighter by lifting this color value here. But now with our mattress material here, we can actually probably select this over here, our pillow, and then we can add that to our mattress texture. And again, just select everything, Smart UV Unwrap. We could probably have done this using Generated also if we wanted to. Let's just see what our other texture looks like. Our book pattern. Let's duplicate this material and we will call this our pillow. And inside of our pillow, we're going to want to change out our textures that we already have in here to these guys. So I'm going to plug our color in down there, our displacement, just drag that over there. Our roughness, drag that up here, and our normals, just drag that over here. Let's plug this new roughness directly into there. And then also our roughness can go into our color ramp that's going all the way over into our displacement. Although this time we actually do have a displacement value, so let's just replace this value with that. Delete our color ramp. And then our color can plug into our desaturation node that we're having. Of course, all of these vectors need to get plugged in as well. And then, of course, our book pattern here can get plugged into our normals. And this, of course, gets plugged into our mapping node. Let's see what scaling of 1 looks like on this. This is probably closer to what we want. So we can change the value to be quite a bit brighter. So we can do that by lifting like the darker gray section of this. Let's get everything plugged into this normal map. And then the only other thing is our actual texture that we have for this. Let's go to our settings, and then, yeah, this says displacement and bump. So we should be good there. The only thing then is if we multiply this by a larger number, then this should give us a little bit more of some bumps that we can work with. And honestly, just the same texture goes on the lining around this. So now we'll select our pillow back here, and we'll just do the same thing. Pillow. Then we'll select the lining again. I haven't UV unwrapped it, so Smart UV Unwrap. That way everything doesn't look distorted. It's just so much in the background back there that we're barely seeing it, but I also kind of feel like I like this pillow, but I think there needs to be another pillow over here. So we go to like top view, we could just duplicate this pillow. Something like that. I do want for this hair up here, let's make some adjustments. We're going to add in a new material that we can call, that will be a principled hair BSDF. I kind of don't need, let's turn the saturation off so at least it's gray. Let's go to our actual hair settings on this guy and change our render option to our hair that we just created. And our size of said hair needs to be smaller, so not that guy. Probably half that. Oh, that's feeling a lot better. I can already feel it, guys. Let's make the hair a little bit darker, though. And, I mean, we can make it darker, but also have, like, random roughness. That way some of the hairs are actually darker than other hairs. Let's see what 100 looks like after it simulates. If we do have that much hair, I feel like we're gonna need some more light. Specifically, this up here. Let's do this and just kind of rotate that around a little bit. Make it a little bit brighter even. I don't really care. The main thing that we can edit here though is that it's using this character as its light link, whereas maybe I only want the head and hair to be lit up. So select the area light, and if I select our head and drag that in, now I can light only the head and not the body, because I want this to be a little bit darker there, but I do want the hair to be lit up by this light. With our hair particles though, it's mostly the overall scaling, so it's like 0.5 right now. I think 0.25. And then yeah, let's go back and cache this again. Let's see, let's go to our cache options real quick, so that way I don't have to cache this every single time. Do cache, and then let's do external on our cache. And oh, I saved my cache. Let's get some stone textures for the bed. So with that selected, let's make some adjustments here. We're gonna add in a new material to our bed that we have, and we'll call this, so we'll just call this bed. The problem, again, we're doing this in black and white, so we're going to want to change this material here. If we just drag this over into our base texture, it's going to have a color associated with it, a slight color. It's like green. So our wall texture, or the bed texture that we have down here, the first thing we'll notice, of course, is that nothing lines up. So let's go ahead and just drop in some new mapping nodes that we can just see what the scaling looks like on all of this. Probably going to want this to be contrastier to what it currently is at. Let's use a smart UV project here, and then we just plug this roughness into the roughness of our principled BSDF. And I'm going to use the same vectors for all of our materials here, because we're scaling everything by 4. And then finally, this is also going to go to our displacement all the way down there, which we're just going to use a math node to multiply against to get this material all the way here. Now, against our reference, though, I do want this to be a little bit lighter, because we also have to change the saturation to be 0 for our bed, because we want it to be black and white. And we can also lift this up by whatever value we see fit. I don't want it to get too lost between our sheets and our bed cover, so it does need to be darker than it, but by how much is the question. Probably 3, because that actually looks really sweet. Now the only thing is, I don't know. Let's mess around with this. If we have it be less rough, so if we just go look at our roughness here, we can actually increase the contrast like we did earlier to be something like this. This might actually look pretty nice for our scene. And then I'm going to do that same material over here on the other part of the bed, because this is going to go all the way around. And yeah, if I go to edit mode here, we're just going to select everything and then say smart UV unwrap. Again, over here, select everything, smart UV unwrap. Let's duplicate our current bed texture that we have, and we'll call this backboard. And on our backboard, we'll change the value of this to be like a 6 or something. That's what we were doing earlier to lighten it up. Try 12. And that's pretty nice. I'm going to do that here as well. We'll select our backboard, and that way these pieces here are going to be lighter than this piece here. Let's split the difference on this. So I'm going to call this backboard 2. I'm going to half this. Let's find some metal material for these little stands down here on the ground. So if I add a new material here and we call this bed legs, call it bed legs. Let's put the roughness in, of course. And finally, let's plug the normals in, but we're going to need to import a normal map with it. And we could probably get away with not doing anything with the displacement, but let's just plug that in. And of course, we're going to want to remove our saturation. And now for the very background here, we're going to have a rock wall texture. And we used plastered earlier, but we're going to be using the other texture that we downloaded. I think just looking at the roughness, let's just see how screwed up our background is. Obviously, we're going to want to unwrap it, so let's do smart UV projection. So we use a value and plug that into our scale. Now, if I change our scale here to be something larger, it's going to change the amount that we're seeing this texture. Probably something around a 5.3. And yeah, let's keep this color ramp on there. Let's use the same vectors for all of these materials. So okay, we can change our value here to be way lighter. Am I doing anything? Is it a normals issue? It might be a normals issue, I suppose. Oh, that's right. That would make sense. Let's add in a normal map. Let's keep that in there. And then we're going to add in a normal map. And then our brightness over here, that's crazy. We'll lower that now to a reasonable number. 20 is not bad. It's just feeling very busy, and I don't want it to feel too busy. The ground, though, here, let's select the same rock wall texture. I might duplicate it and call this rock floor. And let's change this value to like a 1. I almost want to see like a lamp over here or something like that. But maybe it's good that we don't see it, but that we have just the presence of a light just off. We throw all of our area lights under lighting. And then for our eyes here, I think currently the roughness is pretty high. We can always make the roughness less, so that way they're a little bit more reflective. I will say we either need this to be brighter on this side or, well, that's what we need. So let's duplicate this light here, and we're just going to orient this to be correct. And then let's change the wattage here to be a lot smaller. And then, of course, in our actual light linking settings here, say Nuke. I'm going to go grab our character's head, and just that's the only thing that it's going to be really lighting, because I want to make sure that that is the part that is brighter. We might want the torso as well, so we can select this and call it torso, just that way we know which one we're adjusting here. But then inside of our light linking settings here, let's add torso, and that way this whole part of his body is going to be lighting up. I don't need the arms to really be that much brighter. For the actual shading, though, let's go add a new material, call it arm. We're just going to actually, let's apply our multi-res that we have already. Before we join this stuff, this needs to be, let's clear the parent, keep the transform. That's what we want to do for both of our wrists that we created. So now if we join this stuff together, we should totally be fine. And our arm material can just be a copy of probably what our torso is. So if I select our torso as our material here, this is going to be for our arm. And then all we need to do then is duplicate this, and then we'll call this arm. Let's select everything here. I'm going to select this arm here, and if we go to our UV editor, we'll just grab everything and move it over. Just want to kind of create the same happy accident that we already had. Actually, let's, I think I know what the issue is here. Let's just move that over like so. And then inside of this arm here, I need to assign this, because I don't think it was assigned the material. The only thing is, on top of all of this, we're going to need to do the texture painting. So I'm actually going to add in a modifier, and we'll call this like a decimate. If we decimate this to like 0.1, see what that does for us. This will make it a little bit lighter inside of our viewport, which will allow us to do all of our texture painting on top of it. The thing we're really going to want to do now, though, is under our shader editor, we have our arm selected here. We're going to want to add in a new texture paint option. And we can do that by just going over to the texture paint tab, and we're going to add in a new material that we will add into our shader editor. And this new material, we're actually going to paint specifically for this arm. Now inside of our torso, instead of torso here, we're going to say image new, and then we're going to call this arms, new image. But we'll say image, save as image arms.png is totally fine. Now, if I add in an image texture, I can select our arm texture that we just created. So just say arms, and if we go view that, we can actually view what that output's going to be. And so back inside of texture paint now, everything's going to be white on the arms, and we can paint specifically the areas in which we want to have kind of like that rusty, kind of like dirty texture. We can go to our texture mask option, and we can select our texture that we already have. Now, I imported this last time. This is from our surface imperfections pack that I created. But all we have to do now, though, is with this texture mask selected, we will then paint the areas in which we want to have darker. Now let's go to solid view here. Yeah, it's loading a lot quicker now. And if we open this up, and I'm just going to select everything here, and we'll hit Smart UV Project. And this is going to unwrap everything on our texture plane over here, which will allow us to paint everything how we want it to be painted. Yeah, that's all good to go. So now, with our new arms material that we have here, let's go over with our texture paint mode. I'm going to swap this over to texture paint. Let's select our arms. I mean, here's what we can also test, is the normals flipped on this. Face orientation technically is red on the inside or outside. Okay. Maybe that was the problem. So the normals, I thought applying all transforms would have fixed that. Back to here, Smart UV project. Do it again, fantastic. Swap this over to texture paint. Yes! Normals, guys, the normals are the problem. Now all we have to do is select our texture mask, and I'm going to select that here. And we can go ahead and paint in on these arms, the areas in which we want it to have that material. So we already have our arms texture loaded in. And then overall, we'll just follow some of these bumps that we have in here as well. I'm thinking, let's see. We've got this texture. Let's load in another texture as well. We could do this by just like creating another texture material here. Hit open. I have all of these surface imperfections, as I mentioned earlier. So let's grab this stain material and back over here. One thing you always have to watch out for is every time you load in a new texture, it also loads it into this texture slot here, which is not what we want. We only want it to be under texture mask. And then now we can actually select our new texture that we added. We just drag that over here. So yeah, now with that, we can just go ahead and hit the save button. And so we're going to have the left arm and the right arm. Go back over here to our layout. Our current material that we're using here, it's called material 2, but we can call this, well, this is his right arm. And with that right arm, we might want to copy and paste some other materials that we have been previously using. So I'm just going to copy the stuff we used on torso and paste that over here. Because we're going to be doing a lot of the similar kind of work on here because we're going to be changing it with our arm V2 rather than what we had for our torso. So our kind of like fingerprints and main face section and all that stuff, that's all good. That's fine. We can keep that kind of selected there. But with our overall, this is where the torso texture is. We can just replace this with our arms V2. And now if we go ahead and view this mix shader, this is just going to have the same material that we created for our overall body over here, but it's going to be using our new painted kind of like texture material right there. The other thing is we'll want to plug this into our displacement. So that way it is displacing this arm as well. So let's select our area light here, and then with cube 3, we could just drag that in. And that's going to light up that arm as well. Okay, great. Now for our other material over here, we're just going to select our other material. So we're using arm V2 currently, but I'm going to disconnect that. We're going to load in a new image texture. So let's go to texture paint, and we're using, that was arm V2, but we're going to hit new, and then we're going to call this arm V3. And now if we load that into our image texture over here, arm V3, and again, we're just going to plug that into the vector here, and this will replace our torso in a second. But this is the painting that we're going to do now on the next arm. And I think that'll work well for that arm. So now we just go ahead and hit the save button over here, and I'm just gonna have to save that texture as a PNG. And but since we already have that loaded in, all I have to do is replace our current base color that we have. And as long as this is viewing the correct mix shader, this arm right here should be the correct material that's all lined up. Before we go in to do some touch-up work on that, I want to finish up the legs here. So let's call this a new material, and we'll call this knees. And we can paint on stuff, or we could just literally use a material we already have loaded. So if we want, actually, let's go ahead and delete that. Let's call this the bed legs, because we already have a metal texture that we created already. All we need is to load that in here. Let's just go take a look at that real quick. And we'll create a new one we'll call knees, and we'll apply that over here as well. But it's a little too dark. I might want it to be a little bit lighter. The bolts aren't that big of an issue, because all I have to do is, the only difference between this and that was if I select my knees here, that's knees 0.01, all I have to do is duplicate this and then call it a bolt. We're going to save after everything we do here. I increase the metallicness of it, and I think I increase the value of it as well. Let's check out the render view of this. I think I actually plug this directly into the metallic. Then for the bolts, I can also do that. I think I also added a color ramp in. Just going to increase the specularity on that. And yeah, that's it. So that's that bolt. I think that bolt's the same. Now we just have to do the legs here. And like I was mentioning before, I think the easiest method is going to be actually selecting all of these and making them just one object. So the easiest way to do this is going to be selecting all of these legs. I believe I need to say Alt-P clear and keep transform. And this right here, let's do Alt-P, clear, and keep transform. I'm just going to kind of clear transforms on all of these things. Now, if I grab that, that should be good. So I have these separate leg pieces. Save. We're going to apply our said modifiers. And now we select everything. Apply. Now we're going to use a decimate also, and let's do a 0.1. Okay, so with this decimate applied, we can actually just hit apply right here. We're just going to say Control-A. And that's going to apply our modifier, and that'll make it so that way it's not trying to always calculate this in the background. I think we should. So let's just apply all of these vertices. Let's apply that. And I'm going to select our entire hand over here and our legs, and then we just join everything together. So that way I could do one paint for everything here rather than doing separate texture paints for everything. And actually the first thing I kind of want to load in is our, let's load in our torso? No, let's load in our head. Because I actually like the overall texturing that we're doing, like kind of throughout everything. It kind of already looks fine, guys. I don't even need to do anything. Yeah, I think that bolt texture works for this wrist piece here, whereas the hand, we might want to do some more finagling on it. So let's do a smart UV unwrap. Let's see what that does for us. Kind of just like overall throws a kind of like texture on there. Let's use smart UV project. If I take this light here and then I turn off the glossy, how much does that affect that? Okay, it doesn't affect it at all. I was concerned about that. I didn't like the little light circle that it created over here. So if we turn off glossy, I'm still getting that to light up the scene better. Whereas right now we're kind of getting this shoulder here that's fallen off into the dark. So we do want to fix that. We can fix that pretty easily actually. So let's duplicate this light here, and I'm going to just orient it a little bit better. We're going to remove the head from it. But I know cube 3 is its own separate light here. So let's grab cube 3 and drag that in. And then this light here, we want to lessen the intensity of it to something like 5, maybe even smaller. And then of course we want to maybe make it, scale that down. Oh, whoops. This one needs to only have head. And that's on this light. And then this light right here, oh, that's why. It's the same link tree. That's cool, though, that it does that. I didn't know it did that. So we're going to create a whole new link tree and then grab in cube 3 for this one. And then this light specifically here, we're going to want the power intensity to be a little bit brighter. And what we're doing is we're just lifting up that shoulder there. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. We're just trying to get that to just feel like it's not blending into the background too much. Let's turn on the hair, see how that looks. Yeah, I'm thinking we're going to want a little bit more. So let's go to this hair dynamics one specifically, and then we can add in additional hairs. Let's try 20. I'm thinking with the hair, we just make it a little bit lighter. I don't like how gray it is. It's just so dark compared to everything else. Turn that. So hair dynamics. Let's turn off external, and we'll turn the emission up here to something like 200. Go back to solid view here. And if I go to 0 on the top, hit the save button. So emission, hair, number of hair segments. Let's see, for dynamics, we want the quality of the steps to be something like 10. Let's check to see how this is doing. So having more hairs might help fix the problem. Ooh, that looks, I like that a little bit better. So go here to the, so this is the arm. Let's just darken this up a little bit. I'm gonna do the other arm as well. Our arm over here doesn't seem to want to be updating. Just go look at this real quick. So that's arm V3. It should be doing it. I mean, under our texture pane over here, we are editing arm V3. Call it arm V4 just for the sake of my sanity. And then let's load in a new image texture. And let's hit open. Arm V4. Yeah, that updated it. So I guess it just wasn't updating for whatever reason. Okay, and then that gets plugged in like that gets plugged in like that, and voila, now we've got ourselves the arm that we asked for in the first place. Well, great. This is just a little bit darker now because of that. I probably should clean that up. So let's go back over here to texture paint. Let's just fix the rest of the arms. That way it's not quite so dark in this specific area. So, because that's kind of where we're running into with some issues. And then over here, this is V4, honestly. Let's load that. Oh, yeah, let's scale this guy up here, right here. And then we're just gonna try cleaning this up a little bit. It's pretty great. Let's see. So Cube 3 has that light on it. Let's also get Cube 4 to have that this particular light on it. So under our light linking settings, I'm also going to add in Cube 4, just so that way that one also is kind of lighting that up as well. I don't see any harm in doing that. We're just kind of lighting it up slightly. Okay, great. We're pretty close. I might want to add in just some more texturing to the torso here, and that's probably it. For our torso, we're using torso texture. So if I go over to our texture paint option, we're using the same torso texture for the legs, and I don't want to screw that up. So, that being said, let's take our torso texture that we have. We can see everything's there just fine. And we're going to say save as a copy. And we'll call this torso 1. And this is going to allow us to make our changes specifically to torso 1. So we're using torso. I want to go back to our thing here. And if we go to our layout option, I need to load in torso 1 as the texture. And that shouldn't change anything right off the bat. Everything should look exactly the same. But now if we go over to our texture paint option, you'll notice that this says torso 1 at the top now instead. So we also want to select that over inside of our texture paint window. And using some paint options, we can just go through and just do some nice light painting for the rest of the body. I just want to add in some nice gray paint to kind of like the overall aesthetic of everything. Maybe here's what we could also do for these arms. We know that we have this arm texture here. We can take this and let's see, the roughness is set to full, but we can also plug this into like the roughness of this. And it should make all the areas in which are black, it should just make those like have some more specularities on them, which might be interesting. And we'll just make that way more contrasty. And we'll want to do that to both sides. So let's copy this. And again, paste that. Plugging this color ramp over here into the roughness. And we take this into our compositing software and composite it over there. So 1920 by 1920, we're going to render this out as OpenEXR multi-layer. So yeah, we're going to enable some crypto mats on this. And I think the only other options are, we're going to be rendering this out as ACES CG, which are new to what we've been doing. Because I'm going to be using an ACES pipeline. And we're going to override the color management here as an ACES CG render. And so yeah, let's go ahead and just render this out, and then we can go ahead and import this into our compositor. But anyways, now if I look at this, it's going to be black. But that's pretty typical because out of Blender, you need to shuffle your options because I'm using multi-layer EXRs. So if I say View Layer Combined, and I output that to here, then that's how that works. So now I'm going to have this set up correctly there. And I can double check my settings. So under my read node that it's doing here, it's set to scene linear. And if I want to make sure, it says ACES CG, which is my scene linear option, but I can also go down here to ACES CG and make sure that's selected. So now all I have to do is maybe I might want to increase the exposure or something like that, but I don't have to if I don't want to. So if I want to do, my adjustments will be very, very minor. Like I want to add like a bit of a glow. So we're going to change the threshold of this glow to be a lot smaller. And then maybe change the size of this as well. And maybe the brightness. But really what we're trying to do is we're just trying to add in a little bit of off the shoulder here. Get just a tiny bit of glow. Not too much, but it just adds in like that extra depth of realism that we would want. We'll do some lens distortion stuff here. So let's redistort this. We're just going to eyeball this a little bit. And might transform this down as well. Just add in some grain now. It's going to add in like this nasty like color to the grain, which isn't a problem because all we have to do to get rid of this at the very end of our stack is we're just going to re-add a saturation node and then just saturate everything out. But then this also just adds in like this nice grain effect to our overall image. I just kind of want the grain size to be a little bit smaller. Pre-multiply this probably here. And then our grade node, let's invert it and just make it a little bit darker. Probably not quite that dark, but let's just see. We're going to blur this next to like 300 or something. Cool thing though is that if we need to, we have crypto mats, so we can make any adjustments we need to like specific things. Let's see what kind of crypto mats we do actually have though. If we go view that, so that's all the objects. Here's the materials. I mean, we can do one of the hair. If we wanted to, we could just add a grade node in and make some adjustments just specifically to the hair. And then I'm just doing a tiny bit of adding like some purple blue into this. So I'm just changing the brightness of the glow here ever so slightly, and that's adjusting the amount of glow or brightness that there is to it. I can always change the size here as well. I think that smaller size works really well. Let's merge this back on everything here as like a, so if we just view just this glow, I want this to be the effect only. And then if we merge this back as a plus option, it's going to do the exact same thing. But what we can do though is we can actually throw another glow on here. And this time change the tolerance to be even less. But then change the brightness to be like a 0.3. And then change the size here to be quite a bit bigger. And again, if we say effect only, we can see exactly what it's trying to do here. I'm just going to merge this back on top of everything again. Just say over plus. So now this is going to be like the smaller kind of like section of it. I want this, the tolerance to be a lot smaller. And then this one right here, I want the tolerance to be a little bit larger. And then overall, we could probably change the brightness here to be a little bit less. And that's going to kind of create that exponential glow. But hey, guys, thank you so much for joining on this Sunday stream. I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming to hang out. And this was a little bit more of a tedious kind of like finishing up of the shot. Thank you so much for joining, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.